Hello everyone and welcome back to Hachina Culture Japan. I'm Hayachi coming to you from Japan. Today we are continuing our story about Japan and the FIFA World Cup. Last time we talked about France 1998, Japan's first ever World Cup appearance. Just qualifying for the tournament felt like a dream back then. But 4 years later, everything changed. The 2002 World Cup was held in Japan and South Korea. It was the first World Cup ever held in Asia. And for us in Japan, it felt like the biggest sporting event in the world has suddenly arrived night outside our doors. Unfortunately, I never had the chance to go and watch a match at the stadium. But by that time, I was old enough to drink alcohol, so I watched the matches at live houses, drinking beer and enjoying public viewings with other fans. That atmosphere was incredible. People were cheering, shouting, drinking, and celebrating together. Every goal felt like the whole place exploded. It really felt like everyone in that room had become one team. Because the tournament was held in Japan and South Korea, the excitement was even bigger than it had been in 1998, and it didn't just involve football fans. Even people who normally had no interest in football were getting caught up in the excitement. Before the tournament even started, TV shows, magazines, newspapers and the news were all talking about the World Cup. There were special programs, feature articles, interviews, predictions and player profiles everywhere. Everywhere you looked, it was World Cup, World Cup, World Cup. Looking back now, that kind of nationwide excitement feels very different from today. Come to think of it, I don't really feel like same excitement from TV or magazine for the current tournament. Of course, people who love football are still excited, but in recent years, sports and entertainment have started to feel more like something only fans actively seek out. Mixed martial arts, boxing, and other sports often shown only on streaming platforms now. This year's football still has terrestrial TV broadcast in Japan, but maybe one day we won't have many events the whole country watches together anymore. That makes me feel a little nostalgic for 2002. At that time, Japan was managed by Philippe Torchier. Many Japanese fans still remember the name Torchier Japan. 4 years had passed since the 1998 World Cup. In France, Japan had clearly felt the gap between itself and the rest of the world. And compared with today, there still weren't that many Japanese players playing overseas. But even so, Japan was definitely improving. The squad included players like Hidetoshi Nakata, Shinji Ono, Junichi Inamoto, and goalkeeper Yoshikatsu Kawaguchi. For Japanese fans, they were heroes. Japan's opening match was against Belgium. The entire nation was watching. Japan took the lead, but Belgium fought back. The match ended in a 2-2 draw. It wasn't a victory, but it was Japan's first ever World Cup point. For many fans, that alone felt historic. Then came the match against Russia. I still remember the atmosphere at the live house. People were nervous. Everyone knew Japan had a real chance to make history. And then it happened. Junichi Inamoto scored the winning goal. Japan won 1-0. It was Japan's first ever World Cup victory. The moment the final whistle blew, the live house went absolutely crazy. People were yelling, hugging, raising their beers, and celebrating like Japan had won the whole tournament. For many Japanese fans, it was one of the happiest moments in Japanese sports history. And I think this tournament was also around the time when huge crowds started gathering in places like Shibuya after big matches. Sometimes the celebrations got a little too wild. That also showed just how powerful the excitement around the World Cup had become in Japan. The final group stage match was against Tunisia. Japan won 2-0 and finished first in the group. Think about that for a moment. Just 4 years earlier, Japan had lost every match in its first World Cup. Now they were advancing to the knockout stage as group winners. It felt unbelievable. In the round of 16, Japan faced Turkey. Unfortunately, Japan lost 1-0. The dream ended there. Of course, people were disappointed, but at the same time, many fans felt proud. Japan had finally shown the world that it belonged on football's biggest stage. Another thing I remember is how famous David Beckham became during that tournament. At the time, Beckham was one of the biggest stars in world football. Even people who didn't follow football knew who he was, and his hairstyle became insanely popular in Japan. I'm not exaggerating when I say that more than 80% of my friends has a Beckham haircut. It really felt like everyone was doing it. For a while, it felt like Beckham was everywhere. That was another part of the 2002 World Cup boom in Japan. There was also a very heartwarming story during that tournament. It was the story of the Cameroon nation team and Nakasue village in Oita Prefecture. Nakasue was a small village chosen as Cameroon's training camp, but the Cameroon team was delayed and arrived later than expected. The villagers had prepared a warm welcome, but they had to wait. Normally, that might have created frustration, but instead, Nakasue became famous across Japan for its warm support and patience. The villagers learned about Cameroon, made flags, welcomed the players, and supported them like their own team. It wasn't just a football story. It was a story about people from completely different parts of the world connecting through the World Cup. I think that was one of the beautiful things about the 2002 World Cup. It wasn't only about wins and losses. It brought the world into small towns and villages in Japan. Looking back now, I think 2002 was the moment football truly became part of mainstream Japanese culture. People who had never watched football before suddenly became fans. Children started dreaming about playing in the World Cup, and Japan's football story was only just beginning. And that's all for today. What are your memories of the 2002 World Cup? I'll see you in the next episode.